Okay, let's unpack this. We have a truly fascinating mission today that I think cuts straight to the heart of what genuine language mastery really looks like. For anyone who has studied English or, any second language really, you know that frustration. You memorize the grammar, you know the words, but when you speak, you still don't sound natural.
Right, that gap, that friction you feel, that's exactly what we're diving into. We are exploring the hidden rules of natural English fluency, these subtle, almost automatic patterns that native speakers use without even realizing they're doing it.
Right, they're invisible.
They're almost invisible in traditional learning materials, and yet they are the mechanical glue that holds conversations together.
It's the difference between, say, building a sentence with a construction kit versus just retrieving a phrase that's already pre-assembled and authentic. And our source material makes this incredibly important distinction here. It says fluency is absolutely not about the sheer volume of words you know.
Not at all. It's about knowing the right combinations of words, the established pairings that the language prefers.
Yeah. It's the shortcut then. The shortcut to sounding confident, flowing, and frankly, just sounding real.
And that is our goal today.
Oh,
This deep dive promises to move us past, the rote memorization of verb tables and endless vocabulary lists. We're going to dissect the specific mechanisms that govern natural English. We'll focus on 3 specific interconnected areas where these hidden rules really show up. First, we'll look at collocations, those inseparable word pairs. Second, mini phrases, which are the conversational tools that smooth out speech and convey tone. And third, natural vocabulary choices, where a single potent word replaces a weaker descriptive phrase. Mastering these 3 areas, well, it offers the key to achieving that truly natural, confident, and authentic English that works in real life.
the kind that works in the highest stakes interaction.
Exactly.
So let's start right at the beginning. Why are these rules hidden? I mean, it seems like it's because native speakers acquire them unconsciously, right? Through just total immersion and endless repetition.
That's it, exactly. For them, these pairings just feel like common sense, like intuition. If you ask a native speaker why they say heavy rain instead of strong rain, they often can't give you a grammatical rule.
They just?
They just know the other way sounds subtly but very distinctly wrong.
And that's the massive hurdle for a language learner, isn't it? Because traditional education, it focuses on these explicit, prescriptive rules.
Which are essential, of course, for structure. You need them.
Of course.
Sure.
But the reality of natural speech is, well, it's descriptive. It's not prescriptive. It relies on the statistical reality of language.
The difference between comprehensible English and fluent English really boils down to predictability. If you use a combination that falls outside that established, statistically favored pattern, it creates that friction we mentioned. It slows down the listener's processing, even if the sentence is grammatically flawless.
I love that idea of friction. You're so right. It's not that the sentence is impossible to understand, but it just forces the listener to pause for, what, half a second?
Yeah, just for a moment.
And they have to mentally translate or correct the phrase. And that slight pause, it just breaks the entire conversational flow.
Precisely. And the underlying mechanism here is something linguists call semantic paucity.
Okay.
It just means that words carry an aura, a sense of association, based on the words they most frequently appear with. When words consistently pair up, they form a fixed unit in the brain. If you violate that fixed unit, the semantic prosody is broken.
Okay, let's use the perfect examples from our source material to really nail this down, this idea of predictability. We're talking about basic verbs used with common nouns. Let's start with the word decision.
Right. We universally say, make a decision.
But logically, I mean, if you're translating directly from another language, you might think do a decision is correct because do relates to action, completion. You do homework, you do a job.
So why does do a decision sound so jarringly unnatural to a native ear?
It's because of that semantic prosody and that fixed unit storage. In English, the verb make implies creation, construction, formation.
It suggests the process of arriving at or formulating the choice itself. The decision is being created.
I see.
Whereas do implies just execution or performance of a task. Since the decision is an abstract result of a mental process, make is a verb that aligns with that sense of creation.
So using do would imply you're performing the decision, which is, like you said, a conceptual impossibility.
Exactly.
So the rule isn't grammatical, it's conceptual and statistical. The vast majority of English usage has trained our brains to just expect make.
Exactly. And the same fixed pattern applies to actions like resting. We uniformly say, take a break.
Right.
A learner might logically try to say, make a break, thinking, about creating a moment of rest.
Sure, that makes a certain kind of sense.
It does, but take in this context refers to utilizing or occupying or claiming a period of time for rest. It's about appropriation, not creation. If you can get yourself to understand these pairings as single, inseparable tokens make a decision, take a break. You stop trying to apply logic to the individual words.
And the implication here is profound for you, the listener. If you can move from constructing phrases word by word to just retrieving these prepackaged linguistic units, you eliminate all that hesitation. You bypass that agonizing second-by-second translation from your native language.
Right.
Instead of thinking, okay, verb for creation, verb for appropriation, what goes with decision, you just pull the automated unit, make a decision. Your speaking speed and your clarity, they immediately skyrocket. It's genuine linguistic automation.
And this ties back directly to the massive databases that linguists use, what's known as corpus linguistics. If you analyze billions of words of real spoken English, you'll find that the frequency of make a decision versus do a decision isn't 70-30 or something like that. It's likely 99-1.
Wow.
The more predictable the pattern, the faster the retrieval, and the more fluent the speech. These fixed combinations are stored as single units, saving precious milliseconds in a real-time conversation.
That brings us perfectly to our first pillar, collocations. I often think of these as the linguistic power couples. They're words that are just inseparable in a natural context. If you try to switch one partner out, the whole phrase feels unstable. It wobbles.
It does, and what's fascinating is that the meaning of that combined unit is often much richer or even subtly different than just the sum of the individual words.
Yeah.
And to add a layer of sophistication here, we need to recognize there are two main categories. You have strong collocations and weak collocations.
Okay, what's the difference?
A strong collocation is where the word pairing is almost mandatory. There are very few, if any, acceptable alternatives. A weak collocation allows for a bit more variety, but one pairing is still overwhelmingly preferred in natural speech.
And the examples in our source are mostly strong collocations,
Yes.
right? Because they're the ones that cause the most trouble for learners.
Exactly. Those are the big roadblocks.
So let's dive into the specifics, starting with adjective-noun combinations, the ones that provide descriptive power.
Let's start with weather. A perfect example of a strong collocation. Heavy rain.
As you pointed out earlier, a learner might try strong rain or big rain, and both of those words, strong and big, are perfectly good adjectives in other contexts. So why is heavy the agreed-upon partner here?
It's the specific imagery the word evokes. Heavy, in this context, is used metaphorically to describe the volume and the sheer density of the moisture falling. It suggests weight, the feeling of the downpour pressing down on you.
I've never thought about it like that, but you're right, it feels heavy.
It does. Strong, on the other hand, usually describes force or ability or resistance, like a strong wind or a strong current. If you say strong rain, it sounds like the rain itself is somehow exercising force, not just describing its intensity or volume. The language has just settled on heavy because it is the most precise descriptor for density and precipitation.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, now switching to a completely different sensory experience, beverages. The source gives us strong coffee.
Another classic. Here, the word strong is highly specialized. It's used to describe concentration.
Right, not physical strength.
No. We're defining the chemical intensity, the caffeine content, and that deep flavor profile. If a learner were translating from a language where they say something like black coffee or intense coffee, they would miss this specific pairing.
And if you said heavy coffee?
A native speaker might think you mean it's really rich or creamy, maybe physically difficult to lift, but strong is the dedicated adjective for that high concentration and stimulating flavor. This fixed pairing perfectly maps a sensory experience to a standardized description.
And finally, a highly metaphorical pairing, deep sleep. I find this one fascinating because it completely disconnects from any literal meaning of the word deep.
Absolutely. Deep sleep. The adjective deep has abandoned all connection to physical depth here. It is used exclusively as a metaphor for the quality and intensity of rest.
So it's not about how far down you are.
Not at all. It signifies a profound, restorative unconsciousness, a state that's difficult to awaken from. A learner who tried hard sleep, or maybe concentrated sleep, they'd be grammatically fine, but it would sound completely unnatural.
Right.
Deep sleep conveys that specific restorative quality that defines genuine rest. It's a measure of quality, not duration. And, by the way, we also say light sleep to describe its opposite.
Ah, another fixed pairing.
Exactly, reinforcing that same metaphor of vertical immersion.
So in all these cases, heavy, strong, deep to you, the English language has sort of assigned a specific adjective to that noun, and that pairing defines high fluency.
That's right. Now, moving from description to action, let's look at verb-noun combinations. This is often where the verb's literal meaning is completely overridden by its fixed usage within the collocation.
Let's start with an action that doesn't really feel like an action at all.
Illness.
Catch a cold.
Right, why catch? You catch a ball, you catch a train. The word implies rapid, maybe sudden acquisition. In the context of illness, the verb catch implies falling ill because of exposure or transmission, almost like the illness is suddenly captured by the body.
And it's important here to compare it with the slightly weaker collocation, get a cold, right?
Yes. This introduces that necessary intellectual friction. Both catch a cold and get a cold are undeniably fluent. Anyone would understand you.
So how do we explain the difference, if there is one?
Well, the source material acknowledges that get a cold is a weak collocation, meaning it's perfectly acceptable and highly frequent. It's not wrong. However, catch a cold carries a slightly higher sense of suddenness or immediate exposure. More critically, catch is reserved almost exclusively for communicable diseases. A cold, the flu, maybe some infections.
Whereas get is much broader.
Much broader. You can get sick, get better, get tired. So for a language learner aiming for the most idiomatic expression of falling ill, catch a cold is often the preferred choice because it's a more specific, established, fixed unit.
That specificity is key. Now let's move to an action where the verb's original meaning is just completely discarded. Break the news.
This is maybe the ultimate illustration of a non-literal collocation. When you break the news, you are not physically shattering anything.
Right.
The verb break here means to reveal information, specifically sensitive, difficult, or often unwelcome news. The semantic prosody of break in this context signals disruption. You are disrupting the status quo. You're disrupting the person's peace or their ignorance.
So the word itself carries the emotional weight of the announcement. If a learner translated this literally and said, I have to tell you the news, it's fine. But it just lacks that specific nuance and, I don't know, the dramatic flair conveyed by break.
Absolutely. Break the news signals a moment of significant, often negative, revelation. You can contrast that with other verb-noun pairings for information, like share information or disseminate data.
Those are very neutral.
It's very neutral. Break the news is highly charged. If you say, I need to break the news about the merger, everyone in the room knows it's probably bad news for someone. This linguistic unit is powerful because it tells you not just what is happening, but how it will likely be received.
And to give our deep dive the necessary weight here, we should probably broaden the scope beyond just those core examples because these things appear everywhere.
That's a great idea. We should look at some weak collocations and maybe some more formal ones.
So what's a good example of a weak collocation?
Consider pay attention.
You could technically say give attention, but yeah, pay attention is definitely the fixed norm. It almost elevates attention to a kind of currency.
Exactly. The verb pay implies you're giving something valuable or costly, reinforcing the idea that focusing your mind requires real effort and concentration. Give attention is just less forceful.
Right. Pay attention is a strong command.
It is. It's an instruction, implying that attention is a resource being expended.
And what about just everyday chores? The source notes that even mundane activities have these fixed verbal partners. We say, do the laundry.
This is a fixed but weak collocation because you're using the generalized verb do to describe a task. It's similar to do the dishes or do the shopping.
But then if you switch to another domestic task, the verb changes completely. You make the bed.
Exactly. You don't do the bed and you don't make the dishes. The verbs here are arbitrary, but they are absolutely fixed. Make the bed means to tidy or construct it for use, while do the laundry uses that generic verb for performing a generalized task. This just demonstrates how a learner has to acquire these patterns one by one. Logic will fail you.
It really seems like the takeaway here is that fluency means developing an ear for these arbitrary fixed pairings, accepting them, and committing them to memory as single units. Because trying to logically construct them will always lead to that little delay and ultimately unnatural speech.
Precisely. You're learning the language the way it is actually used. And that is the key distinction between a very good student and a truly fluent speaker. Now we can transition from these fixed word pairings that convey core meaning to more flexible conversational tools, mini phrases. What's so fascinating here is that these are often overlooked entirely in textbooks because they add very little to the semantic content of the sentence.
Right, they're not about the what.
They're not about the what, they're about everything else. They add everything to the social and emotional context. They function as social indicators, adding conversational cadence, tone, and texture.
I think of these as the verbal equivalent of body language or facial expressions. They bridge gaps, they soften absolute statements, and they manage the speaker's relationship with the listener. They ensure the conversation feels less like a dry exchange of facts and more like a fluid human interaction.
They fall primarily into, I'd say, three categories: hedges and softeners, discourse markers for clarity, and fillers for engagement. So let's explore the specific examples we have, starting with the phrases used for hedging or softening. These are just crucial for politeness in English.
The classic hedges. Kind of and sort of.
These phrases are conversational workhorses. When you use kind of or sort of, you are intentionally introducing a little bit of ambiguity. You're decreasing the absolute certainty of your statement. You're making your assertion fuzzy around the edges.
And why is that important for fluency?
Well, in many cultures, direct absolute statements are valued. But in English conversation, particularly casual or social conversation, absolutes can sound rigid, they can sound overly critical or even confrontational.
Right.
By saying the meeting was sort of difficult, you've introduced subjectivity. You signal that you recognize the statement is just your opinion or that the difficulty was maybe ambiguous, not absolute. This makes the speaker sound more polite, less dogmatic, and much more flexible in their thought. It's a linguistic tool for maintaining social harmony.
It's the verbal way of signaling, hey, I might be wrong, but here's my take. It gives the listener room to disagree without feeling like they're being challenged.
And you can compare that to the slightly more formal equivalent, the phrase in a way. If you say, in a way, the old system was better, it functions as a hedge, but it introduces a subtle reflective nuance. It suggests a qualified agreement. These phrases manage nuance far better than simple, unadorned sentences ever could.
Okay, next, we look at the discourse markers used specifically for signaling honesty or clarity. Things like, to be honest.
This phrase is such a powerful signaling tool. It acts as an explicit warning or a preface telling the listener, okay, I'm about to transition to my genuine, possibly uncomfortable or unfiltered perspective on this matter.
It really sets the stage for vulnerability or maybe a mild disagreement. If I use it before giving critical feedback, it softens the blow because I've framed the criticism within an effort to be truthful. It establishes immediate credibility and earnestness.
Yes, and crucially, it often signals a slight shift in thought. If I was discussing how well a project went, and then I say, to be honest, the timeline was unrealistic, I'm using it to pivot to an opinion that might run counter to the general surface-level discussion.
What about another one like, I mean?
Oh, I mean is essential. This one is used constantly to clarify, to rephrase, or to intensify a previous statement.
It acts like an instant edit button. Like, that presentation was terrible. I mean, the slides were completely unreadable. You're not introducing a new thought. You're just diving deeper into the meaning of the word terrible.
Exactly. It's an internal correction or amplification tool that is just vital for smooth flow. It shows the listener that the speaker is actively thinking and refining their thoughts in real time, which is a hallmark of truly fluent extemporaneous speech.
Okay, moving on to phrases used for summarizing or emphasis. The source points to the often overused, but let's face it, essential phrase, at the end of the day.
This is a classic cadence marker. It's a verbal signpost that tells the listener, okay, we are moving past the detailed arguments, past all the minutia, and we're arriving at the fundamental, ultimate conclusion. It is a way of saying, when all is said and done, or when we strip away all the complexities, this is the irreducible reality.
I notice it often signals a return to core values or unavoidable truths. Something like, we discussed the budget, the staffing, and the timeline, but at the end of the day, we need to decide if this product fulfills a genuine market need. It just cuts through all that complexity.
It provides resolution, and it emphasizes the point that follows. Another important one here is in a nutshell.
Right.
This phrase explicitly tells the listener, I am now summarizing this lengthy or complex idea into its briefest, most digestible form. This shows a respect for the listener's time and their attention span, and it's a high fluency tool because it manages the conversational pace.
And finally, a mini phrase used primarily for checking, understanding, and engagement. You know what I mean?
This is a foundational filler and a listener engagement tool. It's usually deployed after the speaker has explained a complex or nuanced thought, or maybe used an analogy that might require confirmation.
And it serves two functions, right?
Two vital non-grammatical functions. First, it checks whether the listener is still following you and sharing the emotional context. And second, it invites the listener to affirm that connection. It makes the conversation participatory rather than just a monologue.
It's much softer than the slightly aggressive, "Do you understand me?"
Mm,
which kind of puts the onus on the listener.
it really does.
You know what I mean? Is softer. It seeks validation and shared context. It's asking, are we on the same page emotionally and conceptually?
And that's the connection back to overall fluency. These mini phrases are the rhythm section of English. They don't just add flavor, they help the speaker bridge the gaps, buy time to formulate the next complex thought, and manage the social contract of the conversation.
So they ensure the speech is smoother, clearer, softer, and just. Far more natural than strictly grammatical sentences could ever be on their own.
Absolutely.
Now we move to the third major hidden rule, which is purely about linguistic efficiency and impact. Leveling up your lexicon. This is about moving beyond basic generalized adjectives like very and upgrading to single, vivid, powerful words.
And why this matters is rooted in impact and economy of language. Using stronger, single synonyms makes your language sound richer, more sophisticated, and undeniably more fluent. The word very is often a crutch word that native speakers tend to use less frequently as their vocabulary matures. Its only job is to intensify a weak base word.
Right.
By choosing one strong word, you convey the intensity instantly and you eliminate that redundancy.
So let's dive deep into the specific replacements the source provides, starting with the most common modifier, very big.
Instead of very big, the fluent alternatives are huge or massive.
Can you analyze the mechanics of that shift for us? Why is huge better?
When you use very big, you're using two separate words, an intensity modifier and a scale descriptor. By choosing huge or massive, you embed the intensity directly into the word itself. Huge immediately suggests extreme volume or dimension. Massive adds a sense of weight and bulk and overwhelming size.
So they even have slightly different flavors.
Crucially, these single words often imply different types of bigness. A mountain might be massive, implying weight and permanence. A birthday cake might be huge, implying volume and surprise. Choosing one strong, evocative word is a central principle of high fluency. It avoids the need for two weak, descriptive ones.
Okay, moving on to physical state, we're replacing very hungry.
The fluent alternative here is starving.
And starving carries such a powerful, almost dramatic emotional resonance.
It does. It doesn't just describe hunger. It conveys extreme, urgent hunger. If you are very hungry, you need dinner soon. If you are starving, the feeling is acute, perhaps bordering on distress.
But we use it conversationally all the time.
All the time. This word choice connects immediately to a vivid, almost exaggerated feeling, which is entirely common and accepted in conversational English for emphasis. For the learner, switching from the two-word phrase to starving instantly elevates their expression. It communicates intensity and often a touch of urgency.
And the state of physical depletion, replacing very tired.
The natural choice is exhausted.
Again, implying a state of extremity, totality.
Absolutely. Exhausted implies a complete depletion of energy. It's not just needing a nap, it's being worn out, drained, and utterly fatigued. And what's interesting about exhausted is just how frequently it's used. In casual conversation, I'm exhausted is the common, fluent choice, far more often deployed than the two-word phrase, very tired.
It's efficient and impactful.
It is. It fulfills the fluent speaker's goal of conveying maximum intensity in minimum time.
And to truly make this a deep dive, we need to show the breadth of this rule. We can't just stop at 3 examples. Let's incorporate several more crucial replacements that our sources emphasize.
Agreed. Let's look at emotional states, starting with intensity of happiness instead of very happy.
We use ecstatic or elated.
Perfect. Very happy is so generic. Ecstatic conveys overwhelming joy, often with a sense of excitement or even a physical manifestation of happiness. Elated often suggests high spirits because of a success or an achievement.
So different strong words communicate different nuances of joy.
Exactly.
Next, intensity of cold instead of very cold.
Freezing, or maybe chilly, if it's less intense.
Notice the difference here. Freezing is hyperbolic.
Yeah,
You're obviously not turning into ice.
not literally.
But the word is accepted idiomatically to mean intensely cold.
That's vital. Fluent English uses hyperbole as an intensifying mechanism, and you can compare it to chilly, which is a perfect moderate temperature word implying discomfort but not extremity.
Right.
A fluent speaker uses chilly when the temperature drops a little and freezing when they truly need a strong coat.
Okay, what about anger? Replacing the general very angry.
Here we have some powerful options: furious or irate.
And the register changes dramatically there. Furious is highly common in conversation, conveying intense, overwhelming anger.
While irate tends to be slightly more formal or maybe journalistic, it suggests a sustained state of displeasure or strong protest. If a learner uses irate, they'll sound articulate and precise, but perhaps a bit formal for a casual setting. This brings up an excellent point. When you're choosing strong vocabulary, you also have to be aware of the register, the formality you're conveying.
That's a great point. Let's add a state of fear, replacing very scared.
We use terrified, or
Yeah.
perhaps more colloquially, petrified.
Again, extreme hyperbole. If you are terrified, you feel overwhelming fear. If you are petrified, you feel so scared you're immobilized, literally turned to stone. This word adds a specific physical implication to the fear.
And finally, let's do an important academic or descriptive word, replacing very important.
We should use crucial or essential.
These words eliminate that vague modifier, very, and they replace it with a definitive, specific relationship. Something is crucial if it's a central deciding factor. It's essential if it is absolutely necessary for existence or function. These words carry immense weight and are the hallmark of concise, effective communication.
The power here is just undeniable. By replacing these common crutch words like very and the weak adjective they modify with a single, high-impact linguistic unit, huge, starving, furious, terrified, crucial, the listener is instantly upgrading their speech repertoire. You're achieving that high fluency economy that native speakers just gravitate towards.
So now we have to shift focus dramatically. We've established what to learn, the collocations, the mini phrases, the strong vocabulary. But, knowing these rules is only the first step.
Right, they have to be internalized, applied automatically.
Exactly. And the source provides a critical acquisition strategy that's focused on active processing.
The strategy is simple, but it's also revolutionary. It moves the learning process away from abstract memorization and into the real world. The core instruction is to cultivate a habit of active noticing, to try observing and documenting how words appear together when you read or when you listen.
This is where we move from theory to action. For you, the listener, this means when you watch a show or read a newspaper or listen to a conversation, you are no longer passively consuming the content. You are actively searching for the pairings.
You're a detective.
You're a detective. When you hear the politicians say, to be honest, the situation is absolutely crucial, you underline those units. You note the collocation, absolutely crucial, and the discourse marker, to be honest. You are essentially becoming a personal amateur corpus linguist.
So how does the brain actually internalize this? You mentioned it's like a statistical machine. How do we reinforce the correct patterns?
Well, the brain stores combinations based on frequency. Every single time you encounter pay attention, that pairing gets a stronger weighting in your internal database. And critically, because you are actively searching for and noticing these natural pairings, you are starving your brain of input for the unnatural pairings. You rarely, if ever, encounter give attention.
I see.
Over time, that constant exposure and observation builds a robust statistical model of English, where the correct collocations and phrases are the most probable and easily retrievable patterns.
So what are some specific, actionable steps the listener can take to implement this noticing strategy? It can't just be vague advice.
No, absolutely. We need concrete homework. First, establish a collocation journal, and don't write single vocabulary words. Write the entire phrase.
The whole unit.
The whole unit. If you learn deep sleep, write it as one unit. Maybe even underline the adjective deep. Second, use dictionaries that are designed for learners, which often list common pairings and examples, not just definitions. Specifically, when you look up a verb like make, look at the example sentences to see what nouns consistently follow it. You'll see a mistake, a plan, a noise, a decision.
That's a huge shift in perspective. You're training your brain to see the unit, not the individual components. What about for the mini phrases and the strong vocabulary?
For mini phrases, the strategy is about situational tagging. When you hear, at the end of the day, mentally tag its function, summarizing. When you hear kind of, tag it, hedging, softening, this trains your brain not just on the words themselves, but on their social function.
That's clever.
And for the strong vocabulary, the best strategy is proactive replacement. Pick 5 very X phrases you use frequently, for instance, very cold, and commit to only using the strong alternative, freezing, in the next week. Force the replacement until it becomes automated.
This whole methodology is so powerful because it reinforces all three areas at the same time. When you are listening, you're not just noticing the collocation, like break the news. You're also internalizing the usage of the mini phrase, maybe, to be honest, that might come before it. And you're noting the single strong word furious used instead of a modifier.
Exactly.
The power of noticing patterns is that it trains the whole system at once, allowing the speaker to move from conscious application to authentic unconscious fluency.
This focused observation is the key to unlocking the English that truly works in real life. True fluency doesn't come from rigorously following prescriptive grammar rules applied to isolated definitions. It comes from recognizing, internalizing, and then replicating the natural observable patterns of word relationships that dictate the flow and texture of actual conversation.
We have completed an exhaustive deep dive today into the hidden rules of English fluency. We established that fluency is fundamentally about combinations and frequency, not just the quantity of isolated words you know.
We dissected collocations, our linguistic power couples, and analyzed why fixed pairings like make a decision, take a break, and catch a cold are just non-negotiable for natural speech. We dove into the descriptive power of terms like heavy rain and deep sleep.
And we explored the conversational texture added by many phrases, the essential social lubricants. We broke down the function of hedging phrases like kind
Yeah.
of, the clarifying power of to be honest, and the cadence provided by at the end of the day.
Finally, we showed how natural vocabulary choices can instantly elevate your speech by trading in weak descriptions like very big for impactful words like massive and huge, and replacing very tired and very scared with the intense efficiency of exhausted and terrified.
It all comes down to commitment, really. Keep practicing, keep actively noticing those patterns, and keep enjoying your journey. That observation strategy is what shifts the knowledge from the theoretical to the functional. The goal is to make the correct combination the one that feels most probable and easy to retrieve.
Absolutely. The ability to recognize and replicate those patterns is the key to confident, authentic, and fast communication.
So what does this all mean? If language fluency relies fundamentally on recognizing established, predictable patterns, the hidden rules that we follow automatically because they're statistically weighted in our minds, we have to ask, what other complex daily activities beyond language are we performing subconsciously based on similar hidden rules we learned simply by observing? What are we missing by only focusing on the explicit step-by-step instructions when true mastery, whether it's in coding or driving or even cooking, often lies in internalized pattern recognition? Start noticing those unseen patterns everywhere because that recognition might just be the fastest path to mastery in every area of your life.